ألا من كنت مولاه فهذا علي مولاه. اللهم وال من والاه وعاد من عاداه.
My name is Mansoor Khatib. Ahmed Abdul Majid is my full name. I have there's 8 of us, 4 brothers, 4 sisters. I grew up in, I grew up in so many different places. We were poor, so we never could afford the rent. We always got evicted, so we moved from one place to the next place. I lived all over New Jersey, but I can't really tell you one specific place. It wasn't it was maybe until I got, I think we were 13 or 14 years old till my father found a good job and we got settled, so to speak. But my father was seeking Islam before I was even born. He became Muslim before I was even born. So I was born in I was born into Islam, into Islamic household. But and my father went, for the first 5 years of my life I was in Saudi Arabia. From the womb, my father traveled and went to Saudi Arabia to go study. And from there he went to Egypt and different countries until he decided he couldn't find a proper school. So he decided to go back to America and just work and try to find Islam within America. Because at the time when he was studying, looking for Islam, they had that whole black Islam, Nation of Islam thing going, and he wanted to find a difference between the real Islam, between what was being practiced here in America. So he left the country to find it. And so like maybe the first 5-6 years of my life, I wasn't even in America, actually. I came back in America maybe around 6 or 7 years old. And as far as I can remember, I just remember us moving from place to place until for the first 6 or 7 years of my stay here in America. We could never really find it was always getting evicted. It was always living with people, always living with family, because my father couldn't find a good job that could afford the rent. So we grew up very poor, but we were very happy. Like I said, there was 8 of us. My father, 5 of us were together, and 3 were from my father's previous marriage. But we all got along. I mean, there was never an issue with that. We lived in a happy household. I grew up as my father trained us to be Muslims. I mean, we learned a lot at an early age. We didn't understand what we were saying, the words, because my mother spoke Spanish. My mother's from Panama, and my father was learning Arabic. Like I said, my father, he tried to teach us Islam at a very early age. He was stern, and he was always tired. I remember him always being tired from working all the time. But even though he was tired and grumpy, he still played with us. He was like I say, he was my hero because of that, because he was big and strong, but yet he was very kind. My mother was really the one who was with us all the time because my father was always working. I remember her she's very passionate. I believe she embraced Islam before my father did. I think she was Muslim before my father was. She was very, very protective, very passionate, very emotional, and very protective of her children. She was a good mom. I mean, she passed away about 10 years ago, but so I don't like speaking of her much because of that. She was. I remember I was a mama's boy during my early ages, and then after a while I became. My father took me out, and I would go study with him, and then him and we had a relationship because, like I said, he was always at work. But I mean, that's pretty much what I can remember about my family, my life. I remember we were poor, but we were very happy. I was a recluse. I remember me going to high school and always feeling out of place because I was in the household. You're preaching Islam, and not just Islam, but the Salafi Wahhabi Islam. Everything is haram. Everything, you can't do anything. Pretty much everything's a sin. Everything's bid'ah. So I would go to high school, and in high school everything was so open and so free. I remember always feeling guilty and always feeling bad that I couldn't, and I remember one time actually thinking about becoming a Christian, to be honest with you. I always wanted to fit in, and I never could. I remember I remember being isolated, really, when I felt so bad and so out of place that during lunch period, I would have lunch in a library because I got really good friends with a librarian. because I felt so uncomfortable being around other kids because I had nothing to talk about. We had nothing in common. I didn't listen to music. I didn't listen to music. I didn't listen to. I didn't go to no parties. I remember even like just trying to play sports, you know, because there were cheerleaders involved. I couldn't do that, so I remember feeling out of place all the time, feeling awkward. I was very, very quiet, and so my best friends were really my brothers and my father, because they were the only ones I could really identify with what I was going through. But I remember once when I was 15 years old, I went through all of the Sahih Bukhari. My father had volumes of the books, and I went through all of them on my own. No, I remember now. He gave me this book called, I forgot the name of the book, but it was about what happens when you die. And that scared the bejesus out of me. I was petrified to death. And I wanted to know, okay, how can I avoid this terrible place called hell that's coming for those of us who, because everything's a sin, and I'm committing all these sins, so what in the world can I do to prevent myself from going to this terrible place? And so I started going through all of the volumes of Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari, and Sahih Muslim, according from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And through reading is when I became interested in Islam. It was through reading the hadiths is when I started getting like, you know, seeing that, you know, like for every one good deed, Allah rewards you 10 times, and seeing that, okay, Allah is merciful, He's not this angry God. Because initially before then, I was doing everything out of fear. It wasn't until I started reading Bukhari and Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, where I just started to see, well, you know, the Prophet was a kind person, and, you know, Allah gives you chances. He's not as angry as the Salafis will make it seem. And so it was through reading the Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim where I started to get a bit more understanding of the deen, and I really got interested in it. I mean, I remember my father would get lessons at home. He had a friend called Sheikh Ahmed. I don't remember his name. All I remember, his face was beautiful. He was Hafiz of Quran. He had like this glow on his face. He would always come to the house around 8 o'clock at night, and he would teach my father whatever lessons. But I was forbidden to go into the room. They were learning from this. I forgot the book they were learning from, but I remember he always came in. He was a mechanic or something of that nature, because I saw his uniform. But he had a great knowledge of Islam, according from the Wahhab Salafi sect. And it seemed like even though he was a mechanic, his mission in life was to spread Islam. Like, he just did this to make money, but his passion was the religion. And I remember me looking at him and thinking, wow, I want to know, inshallah, when I get older, I want to be like that. Like, I don't care what I do to make money, to put a roof over my head, but I want to be like, because see me, he reminded me of the Prophet, because he was always smiling, he was very pleasant, he had a nur on his face, like a glow on his face, because he was always reciting Quran. And I remember thinking, man, when I get older, I want to be like him. I don't care what I have to do to make money. I'm not big on making money, I'm not money hungry, but I want my mission to be the mission of spreading Islam. So I remember that was that's when I started feeling more comfortable and started to really enjoy the religion, not do it out of love and out of a general concern and interest for it, and for the spread of it, and for the growth of it, and for teaching others. So, you know, in order to teach others, you have to first teach yourself. So around 15 years old is when I started becoming more aggressive in my quest for knowledge of Islam. Between 15 and 24 years old, I started studying with his brother. My father found us, I don't know how he finds all these people, but he found his other brothers willing to teach us for free. His name is Sheikh Abdul Razak Hijab. That was his name. I recalled earlier today. I remember whatever we was learning we would go to this mosque that would teach us, as well as we would go make salat there. And I remember whatever they taught us there, Sheikh Abdul Razak Hijab, he would make it seem like whatever we was learning there wasn't the whole truth. It was like 50% the truth, but not like maybe they got the facts right, but the reason behind it didn't apply to today's world. So we don't really have to follow it like mia for mia or you know, point for point. So I remember that's when I started thinking, well, I got to get out of here, because I don't know what's real, what's not. Is it what I thought it was what Sheikh Abdul Razak Hijab was saying, because it was more logical, you know, like the whole thing about the wearing anything below the ankles is in the hellfire. You know, the reason that he said why the Prophet was make a comment like that was to take a big problem from the Arabs at that time and make it, and say one comment and make it simple so they can stop doing it. You know, their clothes walking, the arrogance of their having long clothes, and the feces that catches because they walk on the grounds that has like the feces of the sheep and the cows and things of that nature. So when they go make salat, that the salat is batil because of the najis on their clothes, he would make one line to clear 2 problems up. And I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. Islam is easy, but it's not as rigid as they make it seem. So around, from 1524, when I was studying with him, he would teach us like the Arabic, and we would hafiz Quran with him. From 15 to about 23, because he went away to Egypt. At first I wanted to go to Al-Azhar, because he was Egyptian. He would always claim Al-Azhar was like the greatest school for if you want to learn Islam. But when he went away, I had no connections with Al-Azhar. I didn't know how, like, who do I write, who do I call? You know, this was before computers was like really big. So like, how do I get in contact with anyone over there? And my father's best friend, Shu'aib, was in Syria at the time. He was working for the American Language Center in Syria. And he said that there's a school called Jami' Abu Nur in Syria, in Damascus, and I could study there. So what I did was I worked 2 jobs, 2 security jobs. And I saved my money, and enough money so that when I went over there, I have enough money for me to stay over there maybe 2 to 3 years. And that's when I decided to go, and that's why I wanted to go. It's mandatory. I mean, I was getting Arabic lessons there, and I was getting lessons on how to make salat and things of that nature, basic fiqh. But when I would go to my other classes from Sheikh Abdul Razak Hijab, it was a private lesson, just a father. He was very basically doing a favor for the family because he liked us. He would explain things that they couldn't explain. And when I would go back there thinking that, okay, I'm going to school these guys now, I'm going to let them know what they refuse to tell us, and why won't they just tell us these things to make it sound easy? They would tell us that they would get even angrier and just shoot me down and tell me that, ask me like, who said this? Like, who gave him the permission to say these things to you? This don't make no sense. Like, did this come from Quran? Did this come from Hadith? And the things he was saying was logical. It made logical sense. But because I didn't have enough, I mean, I couldn't tell him the verse of Quran that this came from, or I could tell him like the use of logic, and the use of logic is needed in Islam. I couldn't come with any of these rebuttals. They shot me down and told me that I don't know any better, and it's best for me. They would invite Sheikh Abdul Razak Hijab over to come and speak with him, but it never happened because he said that he knows these people, what kind of people these are, and it's pointless me going over that would just cause an argument. They would come to no understanding. They were all older than me. They were all men. I was probably the youngest one there, easy. I would go there only because my father would go to was studying there as well. There were a lot of these people most of them I have to say they came out of jail. A lot of them were streets. It was like in a neighborhood, like in a poor neighborhood. So it was a lot of brothers that probably they embraced Islam through jail, you know, after talking to them, and me being born into Islam, I had a different attitude altogether. Some of us came from the streets. Some of them were ex-gang members. A lot of them embraced Islam through jail, and I think that some of the companions they tried to imitate were the ones that had the more of aggressive personalities. And me being born into Islam and not coming from that type of a background, I always identify mostly with the Prophet Muhammad. You know, there was a hadith about him and his neighbor that always used to throw garbage on him and curse at him. And once when he came back, he saw that neighbor wasn't there to harass him anymore, and he went and checked on her to see if she was okay. And that hadith was what personified to me the essence of who the Prophet was. He was a person of compassion and mercy, and not so much of aggression and challenging people and being authoritative and just pushing his will on others. And so that was my biggest difference with him, is that, you know, I thought that this was the personality we should have, and they attached themselves more to the more aggressive companions. And this was my issue with them. This is why we can never see eye to eye, why I always felt uncomfortable with that that method of thinking and that philosophy, and that whole, you know, everything is haram and everything is, you know, it made Islam seem so difficult and so hard, especially living in the Western world, where you live with other people who don't necessarily believe as you believe, and probably do a lot worse than what happened during the time of the Prophet, you know, and they think less of you. So instead of being aggressive and being very bold towards others, I've always wanted to be more compassionate and calm. So that was my biggest issue regarding some of my other classmates. I was driven mostly by the differences between, all right, you have two people from the same school of thought, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, telling me two different things. That was part of it. Another part of it was I just wanted to be in the Muslim world. You understand that at that time I was just surrounded by American-born Muslims. I never really experienced many, foreign Muslims or Arab Muslims or African Muslims, anyone other than like the black Muslims I really didn't have any experience with. So I just wanted to go and I wanted to see the world. I wanted to study. I wanted to, just experience what life was outside of America. Because I thought America was so difficult to live in America. I thought maybe it might be easier to live and be a Muslim, be a practicing Muslim outside of America, where you could hear the adhan being called 5 times a day, where you don't have to search, for a mosque because there's like 3 around the vicinity. So, whichever one is closest is one you can go to, where women wear hijab, where everyone practices Islamic adab. And it was a big shock when I landed, man, my eyes was open. I thought, I was under the impression that, there were angels over there, really, just to be honest with you. And when I got over there, it was I was in for a rude awakening. But the knowledge was there, and that was probably most important. But what I found out and the information that I got when I arrived in Syria was probably the most important thing for me. I'm in school, I'm in Jama Damask, but I arrived there during the summertime when they have a break. So school hasn't started yet. I don't know, I know maybe the Arabic alphabet and how to say Assalamu alaikum, but other than that, I can't carry on the conversation. We lived in Sayyidah Zainab with 2 other Sudani brothers. We shared the rent. My uncle, my father's friend, Shuaib, he had a friend called Sayyid Musawi that lived maybe a couple of blocks away from where we was living at. And he had some sons that could speak perfect English. He told me they were from London or something like that, the UK. So I was able to find some people that I could actually have a conversation with. Because other than them, there was really nobody else. So I had no idea if they were Shia at the time, to be honest with you. I just knew that they were just good Muslim brothers that could speak English, and they have a way to communicate with me. So I went over there, and the first day, it was just a typical day. It's like visiting a friend. I spent most of the time with their sons. We talked about America, we talked about London, we talked about our past, we talked about why I'm there. They never, not once did they attack me or say, I'm wrong because I'm a Sunni or anything of that nature. They were just very friendly, very hospitable, and very welcoming. So, and it felt good actually to speak to someone that spoke English. So for a couple of weeks, man, I was like, man, I'm ready to go home. Because when I got there, it was a rude awakening. I had no one there, and I had no family. I had, other than my father's friend, he was, 20, 30 years older than me. So there was really no someone that on my level that could understand me or I could communicate with. So when I went over there, it was just nice just to talk to somebody around my age that had this same interest that I had, and that could understand what I was going through. But I think maybe after the first day, the second day, I spent time with their dad, Sayyid Musawi, and I remember we were making salat, and he saw me pray with my hands folded, the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah way. And he asked me, when the salat was over, he gestured me to come to him. And I remember he's sitting down, and he looked at me in the eyes, and he said, why do I pray that way? I said, because that's the way the Prophet prayed. That was my answer, that's the way the Prophet prayed. And he said, if I could show you some authentic hadiths of how the Prophet prayed, would you change your style of praying? I said, that sounds good. I can't think of anything better than what I've already learned, but it's okay. I was willing to accept any new information and compare it to what I already had. So he says, all right, tomorrow when you come back, I will show you some of these hadiths of how the Prophet prayed. So the next day I come back, he has these books on the side of him, sitting in pretty much the same spot he was sitting before, and he said, he opened the book and he started reading some of the hadiths about how the Prophet prayed, and the thing that got me wasn't the style of how he prayed. I mean, it was who said how he prayed has got me, because, you know, coming from the Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'at school, when you have a lot of hadiths from, you know, Aisha and Prophet's companions, I never heard many hadiths where the Prophet's family members, his own daughter, no less. And I think the ones from Fatima Zahra, alayha, was what got me the most, because that was his own daughter. I mean, that came from him. And she would say, like, my father, you know, I'd never heard that before. You gotta understand, it's like, coming from a system where you rarely hear of them, you never hear of them, period. I mean, other than making salat, where you have to salam them, where you don't hear about the Prophet Muhammad's family, they actually hear the Prophet Muhammad's own daughter speak of her father. It hit me home, because I would always think, I'm a logical thinker, and I would always think, well, who knows my father better than me? You know, I have his mannerisms, I have his ways, I even think like he does. You know, we even cut our hair on the same day. We don't even know it. I cut my hair, he cut his hair. I'm like, oh, you cut your hair? I'll cut my hair too, you know? So like, we like attached, like spiritually, we're attached. So I was thinking, like, who would know the Prophet Muhammad better than his own daughter? And she's the one who got me when she said my father. And then you get other hadiths from, you know, Imam Ali or Hassan wa Hussein. And that really hit me hard, because I knew that they prayed different. I know they had a different ideology, but I didn't know, other than how to make salat, I didn't have no other information, other than, you know, some of the rumors that I heard when I was in America about, you know, what the Shias believe. So at night I said, okay. So I started praying like they pray, the qunut, the praying on the torba and everything. I felt really, I was scared. I mean, when I got home that night, I cried. And then my uncle looked at me and he said to me, well, Shu'aib looked at me and he said, I know it's tough, huh? It can be scary, huh? I said, yeah, because I was thinking, man, if I pray like them, like, I knew automatically that, all right, this got to be correct. I mean, the only difference is who you get the information from, this person or this person, who knows this man, the Prophet of Allah, better, you know? And I was scared because I knew they were right. I knew it. I just wasn't willing to accept everything yet. So I cried, and the next day I would come and I would question him about some of the things that I've heard in America about, you know, did Prophet Muhammad, was he the one supposed to get the Risala, or was it supposed to go to Ali? Is Ali God, or is he just, like, what his position does he hold? You know, what's the position, what's your opinion of some of the companions and things of this nature? And he always answered me calmly, totally. He would blow me away with some of his wisdom. I thought it was from him. It was only until like maybe years later when I was doing my own stuff. Wow, he was just paraphrasing Imam Ali. I'm like, but his wisdom was like, boom. It was like so amazing. I was so impressed by him, so impressed by him. But he was never offensive. He was never aggressive. He never mentioned any names. He never slammed or slandered any of the companions. All he did was just mention the character traits of the Prophet and how his family were the ones that had it more than anyone else. So he came from a position of love, which is what I really appreciated about him, and that endeared me to read some of the lives of some of the Imams. And the first one I fell in love with was Imam Zain al-Abidin, because of, I mean, I never even heard of anyone that prayed like 1,000 rakats in 24 hours. That was like so. I was so like blown by that, and how his own slaves never wanted to leave him. They would rather like perish at his feet than be sold and be freed. So and the concept of irfan was like totally new to me. I never even heard of that before. So I was really blown away by the knowledge and the wisdom and the mannerism of them, and how they were the ones that were truly, they continued the line, they continued the traits of the Prophet, and that's what that really impressed me, what made me want to change. And I remember I decided, okay, I'm going to change now. I'm going to go full out. I'm going to say I'm a Shia and everything, you know. And I'm even going to take my Shahada over again. But I wanted my father's permission first. So I remember going to the Maktab Hatif, and I remember me calling my father, and I was shaking in my boots. I was like, oh man, I hope he don't disown me. I hope he don't think less of me. I hope I don't disappoint him. And when he called, he just gave me the vote of confidence. He said, you have to do what's right for you, and you know, just trust your own judgment. And when he said that, like, I calmed down, because I knew I was right. I just didn't want my father, I just didn't want to disappoint my dad. So when he gave me that vote of confidence, I calmed down and I went full fledged. After that, you could tell me anything about anything, but so long as it was correct, I didn't care. I didn't care if it hurt my feelings, you know, because at that time, when I was Sunni, I wanted to be like Abu Bakr, and now changed from wanting to be like Abu Bakr to want to be like one of the Imams. You know, I felt like sacrilegious back then, but now I know it's the correct way to go. The whole thing lasted, for me, changing the way I prayed, for me, like just diving into some of the knowledge of the Imams and what they went through in different wars that Imam Ali fought, took about maybe a month. So, by the time school started, I was like 2 months away. So by the time school started, I went to Damascus, Jamiat Abu Noor. So I changed and I went to Damascus University for a section for foreigners for Arabic, and I started studying at the Hawza that actually Sayyid Musawi, he was the founder of, from my initial interest into Syria. And a year and a half later, when he came, I would call him and he would ask me different questions and things of that nature. He was just open-minded. He was willing to listen. I think he trusted me because, you know, I was serious about my religion. I wouldn't change if it wasn't something worth changing. You know, if it wasn't better, I wouldn't change it. You know, if it wasn't more truth to it. So when he came over, he was very, he came to my house, and I remember we were sitting in Tadalmun, and he saw me make salat. And after making salat, he said, "Oh, okay, so is that how you pray now?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Because you're praying wrong." That's what I told him. And he laughed. He didn't take offense to anything I said. And actually, that night, he changed the way he prayed. He was already willing to change before he even heard the information, because he knew that, he knows me. He knows how I am. But when it comes to my religion, I don't play around with it. I'm very serious. So he knew that there was something to it. And it wasn't until Sayyid Musawi's son, Ahmed, came by and visited. I don't know if he came to visit me, he came to visit my father and say hello. But I remember that same day he would come and visited, and he sat down and he gave a wonderful explanation of why we pray the way we pray, why we do kunut. I mean, I don't think I could ever say how eloquently he spoke to my father. It really was like Allah planned it. It really was beautiful. And he said it in a way that my father can understand that, wow, this makes sense, this is logical. I can't explain all the details, but it was very profound. I remember my father being very impressed with him. And I'm thinking back, because like me and Ahmed would hang out. You know, I would go to his house and we would talk and joke and laugh and stuff. I never saw this part of him before. This religious, like profound, scholarly type. I'm like, who is this guy? I didn't know this guy. You know, he never showed me that side of him. But he was like that with my father. And after that, my father was willing to accept any new information he got. And he took it slowly. But just like me, the first thing he did was he prayed differently, because he said that even if this Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is also correct, but the Prophet's family also got to be correct too. Like, both are correct, so no one is wrong, even if he changed. So he felt then there was no danger in changing. And it wasn't until he started studying himself where he decided to go, you know, just say that he was a Shia and totally submerge himself in the faith. Knowledge, it was the people. You know, it was the people that, you know, when, you know, it's a shame, but we have like the best religion, but some of the worst practice followers, I should say, the best knowledge. But it wasn't really the knowledge or the Ahlul Bayt. It was just the lack of people following them. And I was in a town with all of this ulama, and I felt out of place. Even in a Muslim country, I felt out of place, and I didn't feel welcome. And that's what probably got me to more than anything. But I never once blamed Islam or blamed Allah or blamed the Imams. You know, I've always said, well, you know, I wish people would just practice more, was really the issue. And that's when I realized that, you know, people are people no matter where you go. In America, I felt out of place. Here I'm in a Muslim country with all of these Shias and all these Muslims and all these, you know, one adhan is going off, and then 5 minutes later another adhan is going off. You know, I'm thinking, wow, you know, you would think that I would be fit right at home there. But I felt every bit as out of place as I was there than I was when I was in America. But it was just for different reasons, you know. But I never once questioned the faith or felt uncomfortable or felt that I was doing the wrong thing. 3.5 years, I studied maybe a year and a half because of the difficulties I had with the culture and dealing with the people and just being, you know, just life in general, really. And also I was dealing with the money issues, ran out of money. Man, I could tell you stories about like how we it truly was a blessing. Sometimes how we even made it some months. So it was because I stayed 3.5 years, and after that I decided to go home because I ran out of money and I couldn't afford to be in Syria any longer. You know, you got to work extra hard just to maintain, just to keep your head above water. Everything's expensive, way expensive, and it was more expensive because I was there 3 years ago, and inflation and everything, prices went up. So when I came back, I was surprised by how much things got, you know, gas prices and everything else was up just in 3 years, 3.5 years. So when I came back, man, I had to work twice as hard, just not even to save, just to not. And then when I got back, like my family broke up, everybody was older, everybody moved out, some people went to school. And so there was like, and I had no place to call home anymore. So I had to live on my own and just working just to keep myself above water. Me living alone in the West, it strengthened me in a way, and also it weakened me in a way. I mean, you do get affected when you're surrounded by non-Muslims, and all you see is, you know, their way of doing things and their way of thinking. It can weaken your manners. Your akhlaq can get weakened. But in another way, it also strengthened me because I didn't want to lose everything. So I didn't want to lose salat, I didn't want to lose siyam, I didn't want to lose zakat, I didn't want to lose these things. So it would force me to study, even though I was working so much that by the time you go home, you know, all you want to do is like sit in front of the boob tube and let it watch you while you fall asleep. But still, it gave me the strength to, you know, maybe read an ayat or read a book or try to further some education as far as Islam goes. But it did affect me. I mean, I remember once when I was at work, it was time for me to make salat, and my boss let me go to the back room and make my prayer. And when I came out, one of my coworkers, who I never knew before was Muslim, he snuck his head in the door and saw me in sujda. When he came out, he realized I was Muslim. And I remember me walking up to him, and he just pointed at me, saying, "That's a real Muslim." And all this time, I never knew he was Muslim, you know. But so it did. I mean, it does affect you. I mean, at that point, I realized, wow, you know, it's alhamdulillah that, you know, I didn't lose everything, to the point where someone that can recognize what a Muslim is can actually see that I'm still practicing. So it made me feel good that he actually recognized me. But I wouldn't recommend people to do this. I mean, I did miss being in the community. I did miss hearing the adhan. I did miss hearing, you know, being able to go to a majlis on a Wednesday night instead of going to a khutbah on Fridays. You know, I did miss these things, but it strengthened me knowing that I could still persevere on my own because of the internet and the computer and YouTube. You can YouTube a majlis all day long. I mean, you know, have a whole majlis from Amar Naqshbandi to Hassanain Rajab Ali back to back for like, you know, 6 hours. Just listen to lectures. So, you know, that thing in this day and age, I don't think, even if you're alone, I don't think as long as you have the internet, I don't think you're ever going to be, you know, away from examples and beautiful stories to refresh you and to revitalize you and strengthen your faith. You know, thank God for the internet. For 10 years, working 2 jobs for 10 years, sometimes even 3 jobs. 2 jobs, 2 full-time and a part-time job. After doing that for maybe 10 years, my father gave me a call and said that there was a house that they were starting up in Orlando, and that if I wanted to, I could come up here and start studying and pursue my education in Islam again. And it appealed to me because, one, I was living in a Catholic, Islamic, Salafi type environment, so I really didn't have any, any friends to speak of, or I wasn't losing much if I decided to leave. So I decided to come to Orlando, and I decided to study under Maulana Beg and in Imam Ali Seminary. Am I okay? Yeah. In Imam Ali Seminary, and just to further my pursuit and knowledge of Islam. Inshallah, the plan is to study here for 2 years and then go overseas to Qom and study in Iran, or if that don't work, study in Iraq. And just do what I always dreamed when I was a child, really. I said before when I was a child that I don't care what it was that I did to feed myself. You know, I'm not money hungry. I never was money hungry. I never had it to begin with. But so long as I can take care of myself and take care of, if I'm married, take care of my wife, But my real job, my real passion is to spread the religion and spread Islam. So as long as I can do that, I would love. I mean, I saw some of my curriculum that I'm going to have over there in Qom, and my mouth is watering. I do believe that whenever I'm feeling down or feeling depressed, I always go back to the Prophet and the Ahl Bayt and take advice from them. That's pretty much